Before the video gets started, I want to give a huge thanks to you guys. The channel just hit 4,000 subscribers, so I encourage everyone, if you're new here, to subscribe to the channel because I upload NHL videos daily, and we're continuing on with our ranking the recent draft series leading up until the NHL draft this month. So today's video, we're going to be ranking the 2016 NHL draft top 10 picks. Here's a look at how the original 2016 NHL draft went. Matthews went first to the Leafs, Laine second to the Jets, Pierre-Luc Dubois went third to the Blue Jackets, Jesse Puljujarvi went fourth to the Oilers, Olli Juolevi went fifth to the Vancouver Canucks, Matthew Tkachuk went sixth to the Calgary Flames, Clayton Keller went seventh to the Coyotes, Nylander went eighth to the Sabres, Sergachev ninth to the Montreal Canadiens, and Tyson Jost went 10th to the Colorado Avalanche. At number 10, I have Olli Juolevi, originally taken with the 5th pick by the Canucks, and I have him so low just strictly because he hasn't played a game yet in the NHL. He was drafted from the London Knights, coming out of junior, currently playing for TPS Turku of the SM Liga, and he still has a ton of potential. This isn't a guy that was expected to come in and make the team right out of training camp, so he's a guy that they have to be patient with because he really does have the potential to be a fantastic defenseman, and the only reason he's so low on this list is strictly just because he's yet to play in the NHL, but this could all change within the next couple of seasons, and he could certainly jump up a few spots. At number 9 is Alex Nylander of the Buffalo Sabres, originally taken with the 8th overall pick. He's only played in 7 games. He has a goal and an assist for 2 points, and those games were all towards the end of this previous season, and him and Casey Mittelstadt both looked good. They both scored their first NHL goals, so that's a nice thing to give him a little bit of confidence going into next season, and in my opinion, he could be a sleeper pick for the Calder Trophy next season. I think he's going to make the team. This team has such a fantastic young core, obviously just going to continue to add to that in this upcoming NHL draft with the 1st overall pick. And Nylander is a guy ranked so low just because he's barely played in the NHL, and that's why these recent drafts are kind of harder to do, so I won't be doing the 2017 draft because I have to give that a couple more seasons before ranking those players. But this one is a little bit tough, but I have Nylander at 9th, but I still think he can be a fantastic player. At number 8 is Jesse Puljujarvi of the Edmonton Oilers, originally taken with the 4th overall pick, and he's a guy who I think the Edmonton Oilers wouldn't draft if they had this back, and he's a guy that really hasn't lived up to what they wanted him to be just quite yet. He's played in 93 games and has 13 goals and 15 assists for 28 points, so it's not too bad, but certainly not 4th overall caliber, and I think if he's a guy that they can put on a line with Connor McDavid, then he can really benefit strongly from that, and maybe even playing with Leon Draisaitl, as he was kind of playing in the bottom 6, and I think he's a guy that would benefit more from playing with better offensive players as opposed to checking forward, so I think Puljujarvi can still be a fantastic player, but quite yet he hasn't just lived up to what they really expected him to be. At number 7 is Tyson Jost of the Colorado Avalanche. He was taken with the 10th overall pick, and I think Colorado really does have to be happy with how he's played in the 71 games so far of his career. 13 goals, 10 assists for 23 points, and he's playing some big minutes for this team. He played a lot in the playoffs, and he had some really good moments, and he played well for Team Canada at the World Championship. So he's a guy I think Colorado has to be happy with getting him with the 10th overall pick, and he's only going to get better, and he wasn't even playing on that top line, so these points are pretty much coming off of all generated from him because his line mates weren't the talentedest players in the world, so he really did have to carry that offense for the line that he played on, and I really think the sky's the limit for Tyson Jost, and he really is a huge part of the future of this team in my opinion, and he doesn't really get recognized that much for the great season that he had. At number 6 is Pierre-Luc Dubois, and you know this was a really good draft when a guy as fantastic as Dubois is ranked at number 6. He was originally taken 3rd overall by the Columbus Blue Jackets. In his career, he played in 82 games, which all came in this season. 20 goals, 28 assists for 48 points. So he didn't play in his draft year, but this next season he came on in his rookie year, and he played fantastic and was a huge part of the success for this Columbus Blue Jackets team. A big part of them making the playoffs, and he scored some pretty good big goals against the Washington Capitals in the playoffs, and he's a guy who I think they do have to be happy with drafting 3rd overall. I have him ranked 6th just because I think the guys ahead of him have had better careers so far, but that's pretty much because they played more seasons than him, obviously playing in both seasons, and Dubois only played in 1, but I really do think he has the potential to jump up a couple spots on this list and be an all-star caliber player in the NHL, so Columbus has to be very happy with what they have in Dubois. At number 5 is Mikhail Sergachev. He was originally drafted with the 9th pick by the Montreal Canadiens. He's played in 83 games and has 9 goals and 31 assists for 40 points. And for a 19-year-old defenseman in the NHL, those are some fantastic numbers. Obviously, he was sent over to Tampa Bay in that trade with Montreal involving Jonathan Drouin. And if you're to ask someone who won that trade right now, it would be the Tampa Bay Lightning, because Drouin hasn't really lived up to what Montreal wanted him to be so far. In my opinion, the pressure on him was too much in his first season there, but Sergachev really has just kind of flew under the radar and been fantastic for Tampa Bay, one of the best teams in the NHL that made it to the Eastern Conference Finals, and he logged a lot of minutes and was a huge part of the success of this team. And Tampa Bay, that was a really smart trade that they made, because they really did have a lot of offensive talent and they wanted to bring in some young talent on the blue line, and that is what they did. Mikhail Sergachev is going to be a potential Norris Trophy winner in the future, in my opinion. At number 4 is Clayton Keller of the Arizona Coyotes. He was drafted with the 7th overall pick, and he's played in 85 games and has 23 goals and 44 assists for 67 points. So Arizona has to be so happy with getting him with the 7th pick. He's been fantastic. He's an undersized guy, but he makes up with that for his amazing speed and fantastic passing ability, and he's a great scorer as well. He has fantastic hands. He's just a very smart player, and it's looking like he's playing a bit ahead of his generation. Like, he didn't look like a rookie this season. He looked like a veteran, and he played like that. So they really do have their franchise forward in Clayton Keller that they've been looking for a long time, and they really have to be happy with getting it with the 7th overall pick. He certainly hasn't disappointed. He was a Calder Trophy finalist. He's probably not going to win it this season, but he certainly did have a rookie season to remember, and the Arizona Coyotes have to be so happy with how he's turned out so far. At number 3 is Matthew Tkachuk of the Calgary Flames. He was drafted with the 6th overall pick. He's played in 144 games, has 37 goals and 60 assists for 97 points. So Calgary has to be very happy that this guy slipped to the 6th spot for them to pick up, as he's been better than some of the guys that have drafted ahead of them. You could argue Clayton Keller is the better player, but I'm just basing it off of how good their careers have been so far, and Tkachuk obviously played a full season more than Clayton Keller has, and he's been a huge part of the Calgary Flames, and he's going to be a big part of their future going forward. And if they want to make the playoffs, he has to play fantastic. I'm hoping he can stay healthy next season and maybe tighten up his, crossing the line a little bit with bad hits and dirty plays. He can still play with that gritty style, but you don't need to be taking penalties and getting suspended, as that does cost your team. And especially with him, you need him in your lineup because he is one of the most talented guys on that roster, and I really do think he's going to be fantastic for the future of the Calgary Flames. And not many people like him, but you do have to respect his talent level. At number 2 is Patrik Laine of the Winnipeg Jets, originally taken 2nd overall. 155 games played, 80 goals, 54 assists for 134 points. And a lot of people could argue that maybe he should be number 1. I feel like most of you guys in here would agree that Auston Matthews is the better player, but for me, he's closer than you think, probably closer for me than it is for most people, as Patrik Laine has been fantastic, and a lot of people just hype Auston Matthews, and just because he's playing for the Toronto Maple Leafs, who are a huge market. But Laine is really, really good. He's a generational scorer, probably the best goal scorer we will see in a long, long time. Putting up 40 goals in his 2nd NHL season is fantastic. He's my pick to get the most goals in the NHL next season. But for me, it really came down to what team would be worse if they lost that player. And I really do think the Leafs would take a huge hit losing Matthews. And I feel like Winnipeg has enough talent that if losing Laine, they could still be a playoff team. So that's kind of what it came down to for me. Laine's an amazing player, but I just think Auston Matthews has a slight edge above him. And I think if their draft was to be redone, I still think Matthews would go number 1 and Laine would go number 2. And obviously at number 1 is Auston Matthews, one of the most popular players in the NHL. Drafted 1st overall, 144 games played, 74 goals, 58 assists, 132 points, and those numbers would be up if he hadn't gotten injured this season. He was over a point a game this season, I believe. He could have been up there around 90 points if he stayed healthy. What kind of dampers me about Matthews is he kind of faded away in the playoffs this season. He looked great in his rookie season in the playoffs, but I feel like the pressure might have got to him a little bit in this past postseason. I really do expect a big bounce back from Matthews next season. Like, he's going to come out with something to prove, and I really do think he's going to be an MVP candidate next season for the Maple Leafs and really is going to step it up in the playoffs for them. And like I said, I have him ahead of Laine because I think if the Leafs were to lose Matthews, it would just damage the whole team and they wouldn't even be a playoff team. But I think Winnipeg would be able able to survive without Patrik Laine. So that was kind of just my thinking going into this. Matthews is a fantastic player. Leafs fans obviously holding on to him for dear life. He is the guy they're going to ride or die with. So he's been fantastic so far, and I really do think both of these guys and most of the guys on this list are going to have fantastic NHL careers. Here's a look at how things would go if there was a redraft and it went by my rankings. Obviously, Matthews and Laine would stay put at number 1 and 2. Matthew Tkachuk would jump up 3 spots to the Columbus Blue Jackets. Clayton Keller would jump up 3 spots as well to the Edmonton Oilers. Could you imagine McDavid playing on a line with Clayton Keller right now? They'd be one of the most fun to watch duos in the NHL. Then you have Mikhail Sergachev jumping up 4 spots to the Canucks, which makes him have the biggest jump out of the whole draft here in my rankings. And I think the Canucks would be very happy if they did end up with Sergachev. Pierre-Luc Dubois down 3 spots to the Calgary Flames. I think they'd still be happy with him. Tyson Jost up 3 spots to Arizona, but I'm pretty sure Arizona would definitely prefer Clayton Keller over Tyson Jost. Then you have Jesse Puljujarvi minus 4 spots to the Buffalo Sabres, and I think he'd still be solid for them. He's a solid player. He has a bright future. Alex Nylander down 1 spot to Montreal, and I don't really think they'd be happy with that just because they wouldn't have been able to pull off that Sergachev for Drouin trade. And then you have Olli Juolevi 10th overall to Colorado, down 5 spots, but he hasn't played in the NHL, so we don't really know what Vancouver has in him yet, so we can't really compare him to anyone else on the list. But this is my favorite part of the video, just seeing where players would have ended up. It's really fun to speculate, so this is where players would end up if there was a redraft by my rankings. So that is going to wrap up the video. I really hope you guys did enjoy. Thank you guys all again for getting the channel to 4,000 subscribers. The big milestone upcoming is 5,000. So make sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel. It seems like all you guys have been liking this series. I'm having fun looking back at recent drafts and doing all kinds of stuff revolving around the draft. Obviously up and coming here towards the end of the month, where we'll have the 2018 draft in Dallas. So like I said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please make sure to drop a like on it and subscribe to the channel for daily NHL content, and I'll see you guys all in the next video.